Education meeting will now come to order. ¿Hay alguien aquí que necesite intérprete para esta junta? No hay nadie. Okay. And we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Don't have any students.
Please stand. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I need a motion for approval of agenda.
So move.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Agenda approved. And we have recognition.
It's my pleasure this evening to recognize two individuals. Jamie Reynolds is the first person we're going to recognize. So Jamie, come on up. Jamie, as you know, is the athletic director at Gilroy High. Before that, she was athletic director at South Valley Middle School. And we're really pleased tonight to recognize her. Earlier this year, Jamie was recognized by the Central Coast Section Athletic Directors Association, and this award is given to outstanding high school athletic directors who have been in their position less than 4 years. This program is designed to recognize new to the position athletic directors who serve as positive role models in their schools and their communities. Jamie was celebrated at the annual CCSADA, how do you say that? Not an easy acronym, awards program on April 19th in Burlingame. Jamie exhibits a high degree of professionalism on and off the field and has high standards for all the athletes that she works with. Jamie's known for her caring demeanor and conveys a sense of confidence that whatever the task or challenge at hand, it will be handled professionally. She models a tremendous work ethic, is trustworthy, and has the respect of students, parents, fellow teachers, and coaches. She's done a tremendous job as athletic director at Gilroy High. The amount of time and effort and coordination that it takes to run the athletic program to the extent that she does is huge. She just lives at the school, basically. She's there all the time. And she's a wonderful role model. So, Jamie, on behalf of the Board of Education and the entire district, I'd like to thank you and present you with a certificate to celebrate your achievements, and I always read them to the public. The Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education proudly recognizes Jamie Reynolds, Gilroy High School Athletic Director, as a recipient of the Norm McKenzie Award from the Central Coast Section Athletic Directors Association. We express our gratitude for your invaluable contributions as a mentor and positive role model for our students. Congratulations, and thank you for all of your support. Thank you. Why don't we scoot that way so we're in front of that? Great, thanks.
It's okay, we won't get your feet.
Yes, we will.
Just let them get fired.
The rule is
Ready, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The second person we want to recognize is Johnny Gogo. Johnny, come on up. You have to come up. We're honored this evening to be able to recognize Deputy District Attorney and Champion of Students in Gilroy Unified, Johnny Gogo. On behalf of the Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education and our PBIS team, we would like to commend Mr. Gogo for all of his hard work and unwavering commitment to our students for the past 2.5 years. He has worked closely with the school district for many years to establish systems of support for our students and families, even before he was assigned to Gilroy. He's been a key member of the South County Youth Task Force that offers support to students and families in both the Gilroy and the Morgan Hill communities. His regular presence at truancy mediation and SARB hearings allows families to feel safe as they seek to improve their child's attendance at school. During the 2017-18 school year, Mr. Gogo established himself as a positive presence on school campuses by engaging directly with some of our students. He implemented the law-related education program at all of our 8 elementary schools. And because of this program, all 5th graders in the district took a field trip to the South County Courthouse to experience the justice system in action, as well as a positive experience with the law. Oops, sorry. Mr. Gogo presented the cyber safety curriculum to our middle and high school students at school-wide assemblies throughout the school year and participated in our annual Rock the Mock event as a mentor to our high school students who are preparing for life after high school. On behalf of the Board of Education and the entire district, I'd like to present Mr. Gogo with a plaque to commemorate all that he has accomplished as a mentor to the students he's worked with throughout his career. And the plaque reads, "The Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education proudly recognizes Johnny Gogo, Deputy District Attorney, Santa Clara County, with gratitude for your unwavering commitment, support, and dedication to the students of the Gilroy Unified School District and the Gilroy community." Thank you, Johnny. I've really enjoyed working with you. You've done a great job. That way a little. Okay, sure. Let's do him first.
You ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, the rest of you are going to come up. All right.
Big group.
Okay.
And
Come on, Chris. Go, Angela.
Angela, honey. come on
Angela,
up. Big group.
come on up.
The more than
Yeah, Angela.
This is a team effort.
It's
Team
a big
effort.
team.
Team effort, Chris.
1, 2, 3.
Yay.
Okay. I got a couple. 1, 2, 3.
Uh-oh.
My goodness.
1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll just mention that Angela, who just came up, some of you will remember Angela from Rock the Mock.
Thank you so
I'll wait till you finish.
much. Wonderful.
I'll wait till you do the last one. And the Google Summits, yeah. Angela Alvarado, would you stand up a second? I didn't know you were going to be here. She did a fantastic workshop at Rock the Mock. I guess, what was the title, Angela? Yeah, and it's really good. I mean, I, as a parent, I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, how do we know what our kids are doing? And that she has some great suggestions about that. So thanks, Angela. We really appreciate it. Hopefully, I know. I hate to say this, Johnny. Angela's sense of humor, I don't know, is pretty tough to follow her act.
Angela's the true rock star.
Thank you.
And now we have general public comment, and we have one.
Yes. Cynthia Van Laar.
And that'll be 3 minutes, Mr. Pace.
Perfect. Good evening, Dr. Flores, President Paceno, and distinguished board members. My name is Cynthia Van Laar. I've been a speech pathologist for Gilroy Unified for over 7 years. I primarily work at Luigi Aprea Elementary School with students in the kinder through fifth grade, mild to moderate special day class. I'm here tonight to share with you about an invaluable tool that I use with my students in the SDC classes, Unique Learning Systems. Unique has 3 most amazing components that allow me to teach students who have individual needs. First, Unique offers symbol sticks. It's in a matter of a few clicks, I'm able to create icons or pictures that match the needs of my students in the classroom, in their curriculum, or even just to give my students the ability to tell me about their, it switched, favorite artist, such as, let me get here. Sorry, I have it on paper too. Back up. Their favorite artists such as Taylor Swift, or if they have Elvis Presley as their most favorite musician. The second thing about Unique, it offers a leveled library. The library has a variety of books that span across reading levels. I can have 4 students sitting at a table with a book that is personalized to their reading level. It shares the exact same content, but it matches their reading skills. We can share a story, each of them feeling successful because the material is at their appropriate level. I have yet to see an online library like this replicated in any general education curriculum. And lastly, it's really my favorite part. It has news to you. This is a weekly newsletter, which I'll give you a copy as I leave, just a sample, that highlights a variety of topics, such as new movie releases, historic events, celebrity news, political insight, and even environmental needs. Did you know that we use over 5 billion straws a day? Or that they've also created a car vending machine? I learned that through the News to You. The topics are endless, current, and they're relevant to our students. News to You pairs the words in the article with picture icons. Pairing the picture to the written word provides many of the students the confidence to read out loud in class. It also allows me the ability to draw attention to the smallest parts of language that easily get deleted, such as the plural S, the verb markers, because they strategically convey the parts of language through symbols by simply having 2 items represented. News 2 has links at the bottom of the page that allows us to investigate the topics on the web. They offer additional activities for us to explore. Today I had the opportunity to attend the iSchool initiative, and I heard Travis share. And the unique learning system is an essential curriculum that fosters learning in an interactive way for our students with special needs. I have greatly enjoyed using Unique for the past 3.5 years, and I look forward to using it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of action taken in closed session. This is not action taken in closed session, but we have 2 expulsions before us, and we have case number 2018-29.
Move to expel.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, case 2018-29, move to expel. Case 2018-30, thank you, I'm sorry. I
Move to
stepped
expel.
on your exit.
Second.
You have a motion and a second.
I have a motion and a second.
Second.
Did you get that?
Did you
Okay.
get it, Lucy?
Okay, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, so 2018-30. We had a motion by trustee Midgard and a second by trustee Good for readmission of 7 students, and the vote was unanimous to readmit 7 students. We also had a settlement agreement. We had a motion by trustee, why can't I think of your last name? Trustee Pace, and a second.
It's the bow tie, it's right in the second.
And a second, I put first names only, that's very bad. And a second by trustee Doyle, and it was a unanimous vote to accept our settlement agreement.
Do you want me to case number?
And that was, thank you, case number 0208-01953, OAH case. Okay, that was all in closed session, and now we have number 4, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Well, as you know, school ended last Friday, but leading up to that, we had a lot of things happening in the district. Going back to June 1st, our last board meeting was May 31st. So since then, on June 1st, we did a visit to Gilroy High, and we're able to see not only, actually on the 1st was our facilities visit to the new 2-story math building. Do we have a picture of that? We don't. We're going to have to get some pictures. But anyway, it's really amazing. Most of the board participated. We were able to walk around the site and see what's happening with the building. It will be done by the first week of August. It'll be ready to be occupied, but it's very exciting, this new 2-story, 20-classroom math room at Gilroy High. And then that day started off some of our graduations. So that night we had Mount Madonna High School over at Christmas Hill Park. It was a beautiful graduation. I think we had about 50-something students graduate. It was really exciting. On June 2nd, I attended the Gilroy High Band and Choir concert, as well as Mr. Pace, I believe, was there for both. And I have to say, I'm just so impressed with our new band teacher at Gilroy High, because the two bands performed, so the regular band and the jazz band, and I'm thinking, wow, they're good. And when he got done, he explained that most of them are first and second year members of the band. Wow. So it was really, including the jazz band, so that was really amazing. The choir performance is the best I've ever seen at Gilroy High. Jonathan Souza has just done a fantastic job. It was excellent. And then the following week, on June 6th, last week, basically May and June are a marathon for all of us up here. We're out 20 nights roughly, for starting with senior awards right through the promotions and graduations. So on Wednesday, we attended the South Valley and Solorzano Middle School promotions. On Thursday, the Brownell Middle School promotion, and then Gilroy High graduation. And then on Friday night was the Christopher High graduation. They all went very well, very smooth, wonderful ceremonies, hardly any flaws or issues. They were just really good. Probably the worst part of it was the wind at the first day. We haven't had wind like that, but I'll take that wind over the heat we had 2 years ago. Anyway, they were just great. We shook a lot of hands. A lot of kids were recognized. It was really good. On June 8th, the same day as the Christopher High graduation in the morning, the city and the chamber jointly sponsored a high-speed rail presentation, which is a big issue for the district, as most of you know. The possibility of high-speed rail coming right by South Valley and GPS is a big issue for the district, because if it does come that way, then we'll have to move GPS to an entirely different site, and we'll have to build South Valley quite a ways away from the tracks. So it's a interest of, we're very interested in high-speed rail. I think 4 representatives were there from high-speed rail, and let's see, Mr. Doyle, Jaime, were you there, Jaime? I can't remember. James was, Linda, and I. We all attended. And I felt like really the focus of the meeting that day was on the business owners. We've been meeting with high-speed rail regularly. We have a meeting coming up this summer. They know how we feel about where they might put high-speed rail and the impact it'll have on that whole campus. And we've gone in writing, we've gone in record in writing about the impacts of high-speed rail coming through. So we'll continue to meet with them a couple of times a year, but it was really interesting to hear their update at this meeting. And now they're considering a third option, by the way. So there's the East Gilroy option still, the adjacent to Union Railway option, and now the one that they proposed earlier is actually about 20 feet is it away from Union Pacific. Now they're talking about an option that would be on both sides of Union Pacific, right next to Union Pacific.
Is the east option a single route, or are there multiple alternate routes on the east?
Single route.
Whereabouts is it located?
We have the PowerPoint.
Okay.
We can show you.
They did have about 3.
Yeah, no, they're only looking at 3, and the third one is brand new.
No, I mean all 3 on the east.
No, they
No.
only have one on the east.
No, one on the
that they're
east.
talking
Okay.
about
Yeah.
now.
And it's basically 1 in the east and 2 through downtown. That's what they're looking at right now. And every time we meet with them, things change. The deadlines, the timelines all get moved out, which was true at this meeting also. Now we're still looking a couple years away. We also had a 2-day management retreat. In fact, some of us are feeling pretty tired right now because we just had a 2-day management retreat. Yesterday in the morning, we had a speaker. You see her on the screen. And basically, Jennifer Abrams was talking to us about how to have hard conversations, difficult conversations with anyone, a parent, a teacher, a paraprofessional. It could be in your personal life, actually. I think you could generalize what she taught us to use anywhere in your life. But it was an excellent presentation. We learned a lot, and some of our staff had already been to a presentation with her. she had us do a lot of activities. And then today, as already has been referenced, Travis Allen of iSchool Initiative came to our district. I'm so excited. We finally got him here. His keynote was just about as good as I thought it would be. It was a little shorter than the last one I've heard when he talked a lot about the jobs of the future, which I wish he'd done today. But anyway, he and a lot of people were there, 100 plus staff, 100 plus people were there. We had all of management, a teacher, parent, and student from most of the schools, and some of our business partners were there. So it was a pretty broad audience, and he did a great job presenting the entire, I think almost all the board was there. And then after the keynote, about 30 of us came over here for a full day on a visioning process about technology. And we actually did amazing. The last hour, we accomplished so much. I wish I could get us to do that in a management meeting. Because by the end of the day, we have identified 3 areas basically for our vision, and lots of challenges, lots of solutions, and action plan that we want to implement over the next couple of years. So, and then I met with them afterwards, and we debriefed and talked about going forward. So it was a really productive day, and I'm hoping we can continue to work with Travis Allen. He's about 27. He just turned 27 years old. He created a business when he was in high school. And he speaks a language that most of us don't understand. You know, we're not of that generation, but boy, does he understand it. And it was really great hearing from him today. So thanks to board members for attending. I'm glad you were there. And Linda and James were here all day. And Jaime. That's right. 3 of you were here all day. So I appreciate that.
So I need help getting us through this meeting today. Thank you, Debbie.
Yep.
All right, so the next is consent agenda, Superintendent's Office and Human Resources. And we're going to try to do something a little different with these consent agenda items. If you have any discussion or any questions, most of us have already submitted those, but if there's something last minute and you'd like to bring it up, now is the time for consent agenda number 5. Any comments? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion for approval.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, consent agenda item 5, A through G, accepted. Now we go into number 6, consent agenda business services, items A through G. Any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, 6. Oh, this is going to be good. Okay, so this is a roll call vote. Somebody please remind me. Educational services, 7A through Z. Ooh, A through Z. Any comments on A through Z? Any discussion?
Pardon me? That's
No.
8.
No, he's 8. Okay, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve?
All those in favor?
roll call
Oh,
vote.
this is a roll call vote. Thank you. I even say
voted
that
down
and
really
forgot.
big.
Thank you. Okay, Lucy.
Yes.
AC Doyle,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
Patricia McCart,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Pisano,
Yes.
and Mayor Roberts.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, 8. And under consent agenda 8A through S, we will have to vote on 8D separately. Is that correct, Trustee Good?
Yes.
Okay, so instead of putting it in a weird place, what we're going to do is just have discussion on this, and then we'll have a motion to approve A to S, A to C, and E to S, and then item D separately. So we'll have 2 separate motions, okay? Any discussion on anything on consent agenda 8? Okay, so I will move approval on 8D. Let's do that one first, make it clean.
Second?
Oh, I did move approval.
did.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay,
You can do that.
I can do that. I just never have. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
And trustee Good abstaining. Okay, I need a motion for A through S minus D.
So moved? Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay. Done. 9. Action information items regarding facilities and maintenance operations. Mr. Mbabacha, you probably don't even know how to act at 7:40:38.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Approval of contract with Hollister Moving and Storage for Gilroy Early College Academy GECA Science Lab Project. Action item.
Thank you, Dr. Flores, President Paceno, and board members. So this is for the GECA new science lab that's going in. It's going to be to move the furniture into another classroom. The other furniture is going to go into a storage container.
Any questions, board members? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Did you get the second? Were you voting on each, was it Mark? Good.
Mark?
We
Good.
trust
Yes.
you.
Lynn, the president asked us to go really fast. Just test it.
For the public, this is Lucy's official first
First.
board meeting.
By herself, yes.
That's why we're kind of watching out for her.
Next
Watch
meeting,
out for
though.
me, we'll watch out for you, it's okay. Okay, 9B, approval of contract with NSP3 for the replacement of the worn and damaged canvas lunch shade canopies at Luigi Aprea School.
Good evening, Dr. Flores, President Paceno, and board members. Yes, this item, my first item, is for replacement of 8 canopies at Luigi. I don't think these were the original canopies, but we estimate them to be over 15 years old.
Mercy.
And the average life is about 10 to 12 years. So they were, 2 were severely storm damaged last year and had to be removed, so right now they are missing 2 shelters. We tried to get competitive bids. We reached out to a few companies. NSP3 was the only company that responded with a legitimate bid. And they have supplied this type of product for us very successfully in the past. And this will be paid out of this year's deferred maintenance.
Trustee Good.
Are these powder coated or do they have plastic on the outside of what?
No,
what
these
type-
are treated canvas canopies.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On a metal frame. The metal frames are existing, they're still intact. We have to replace the canvas covers.
Other questions, comments?
Just that these will be finished by the time school starts again?
Yes,
Great,
they should be. They assured us they could get this done.
okay, that's great.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. 9C, approval of purchase with Belson Outdoors for new heavy-duty coated metal exterior lunch tables at Glenview El Roble, Luigi Aprea, and Rod Kelly Schools. This is what I think you were thinking of,
That's
trustee
exactly
Good.
what I was thinking of, yeah.
So, do you have a question, trustee?
Yeah, what type of coating?
It's a plastic coating. It's the same coating we've been using on, that we recoated the tables at ADB that you brought up. Instead of purchasing new tables, we were able to recoat these. But these are to replace wooden tables that are,
Now, were didn't we powder coat those?
No.
Those metal?
no, it
We
was a
covered them with
plastic
plastic?
coat. It was a plastic coat, an acrylic plastic coating.
And it still looks really good.
They've held
Last
up
time I
quite
was
well.
there, I looked.
Unfortunately, that business is no longer in business in Gilroy, and we wanted to use them to recoat some tables at Gilroy High in the future, but we'll look for another source because that was a very good option.
That was my only question.
Okay, any other
So
comments?
these are the same tables that we recently put in Rucker, and we recently put in Brownell. Same company, and the same pricing.
Good. Questions, comments? Entertain a motion?
Move approval?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. D, approval of contract with Cottage Floors of Gilroy for the floor replacements and repairs at multiple school site classrooms and office areas.
This is our annual thing we do every spring. We contact the sites, we contact our custodians and ask what the trouble areas are. We already have a hit list of areas that we've been watching for the last few years, but cottage floors is our prime source and service and repair person, has been for, I believe, decades in the district here. A very good provider for the district. This year, our numbers are a little heavy because we have extended the life of a few sites where we've been watching the floors for a few years and thought we could get another year or two while they hit that point. So we've got a pretty big list this year. But we still are watching some that might come about in another year or two. We're getting the best life we can out of all our floors.
I have to say, I'm really pleased that we are able to use a local vendor and a vendor of good quality.
Yeah,
So.
he's extremely good.
Questions, comments?
I'm just happy to see it, because I know it's very difficult in a classroom when the rugs start to go. And I think teachers and kids do the best they can, but.
And one thing I would like to say about Cottage, throughout the year, when we call him about minor repairs, he's done dozens of repairs over the year at no charge. If there are a minor seam or a tear, his crew has come out and done minor repairs for us at no charge.
That's great.
Good. Entertain a motion?
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. 10A, adoption of the district's local control accountability, see, it's been a long day, accountability plan. Action item.
Board members, I'm going to make some comments before staff give their reports, because I know this is a really important item, both this item and the next item, the LCAP and the 2018-19 budget. And both items are on tonight's agenda for action. We've sent you a correspondence regarding that, which is available to the public. As the board knows, the district's required to submit both of them by July 1st. That's an ed code. It's not, there's no exception to that. And in fact, we inquired from the county office what would happen if the LCAP and the budget were not approved tonight. And there are some very serious consequences, including them withholding our apportionments. Our apportionments are what pay our bills, our salaries, our operations. And we are strongly recommending that both documents be approved this evening. We don't need the county office coming in and taking over the district's finances because these two documents are not approved. And I want to say some things again for the public. I've said this for a while now, but as you know, after years and years of growth, and you're going to see some charts. Alvaro is going to show you all these charts. I'm just introducing this right now. You've seen them before. Our district had been growing for 30 years. You know, we used to be 8,000 students 25 years ago, and we got our highest enrollment was in the 11.6 range. You'll see it in a little bit. And it started leveling off a few years ago because our the birth rate was dropping and our kindergartners were getting smaller. But for a while there, all the new developments and the new families moving into those new homes, roughly 2,000, was offsetting that declining enrollment in the lower grades. Unfortunately, this year, that didn't happen. So we dropped by 250 students from P2 a year ago to P2 this year. P2 is in April, Alvaro, and that's when our revenue is determined for the next school year. So we dropped 250 students. That's roughly $2.2 million less in revenue for next year. And it's always, when you're in a declining enrollment district, you basically get a year to adjust. So that P2 goes into effect the next year. And that's a very serious concern to us. So the birth rate's been dropping for a while, so our kindergartens now, our first, second, thirds, are much smaller than they used to be. In fact, 10 years ago, we had several schools with 800 or more students. And now we have a couple schools below 600 and a couple schools below 500. So our elementary schools have declined significantly over the last few years. And again, the new developments are not offsetting that at all. It's a major concern for our district. What's happening in our district is happening everywhere. I showed you a chart. It's not in tonight's presentation, but birth rates have dropped in Santa Clara County by 6,000 births in 3 years. That's very significant. And unfortunately, everywhere, that drop in birth rate, which shows up 5 years later in your kindergarten, is mostly due because of the high cost of housing. And there was an article in the Mercury News just this past week about this very issue, and it described this happening not only in our county, but throughout the Bay Area. They're seeing 15-20% drops in the birth rate in communities. They've never seen anything like that. So it's a very significant issue and something that's going to impact our district for a long time. Our kindergartens now are in the low 700s. They used to be, one class 5 years ago was over 1,000. So it's a very significant issue. 300 students less at kindergarten means 300 students less at first, second, third, and eventually middle school and high school. So this is a very big issue. And the reason I'm focusing on this so much is because our budget's based on ADA, or average daily attendance. In other words, how many of those students show up every day? We have very good ADA percentages. 95% of our students show up on a daily basis. That's high for a unified district. So that's the good news. The bad news is we're losing students. And so we anticipate this is going to continue. The test will be next fall. We need to see, is this a new trend? Maybe it won't be 250, maybe it'll only be 150, but we know we're going to see a decline. In fact, our demographer recently updated our birth rate data, and it's actually worse than it was last time he showed us. So we believe that we're going to see fewer students every year. And I've been in a declining district before for 5 years, and every year we had to make huge cuts. You can't keep pace with this kind of decline. The entire operation has to be changed to keep up with this kind of decline, and that means cutting programs and positions. It may mean closing an elementary school. As you know, we had to put plans for building a new elementary school on hold. Thankfully, we got on top of this enrollment situation in the fall, and literally at the 11th hour when we were about ready to go out to bid, after 2 study sessions and a regular board meeting, the board made the right decision not to build the new elementary school and target those funds for our 2 middle schools that need it so badly. But in the future, you saw what happened in a school district north of here recently. They closed 2 schools, and other districts in our county have done the same. The reason districts look at that as an option, it's such a big operation. You can save $3 to $5 million by closing a school, so depending on the size of the school. So we're going to be back to where we were in the recession years, where 5 years in a row we cut $3 to $4 million a year. That's going to become the norm again, and we'll have to look at every possible option. In the recession years, we put a freeze on hiring. So every year, if positions became vacant, we looked at those positions and decided, can we live without it? I put a hiring freeze on in April of this year for going forward. Positions that have become vacant have not been filled, and most likely they won't be filled. And this crosses all bargaining units and management, and all school sites can be affected by this. Right now we have clerical openings, custodial, landscaping, administrative. None of those are being filled right now. So that will be the practice going forward. And some will have to be filled. Some are crucial positions that we'll have to fill. But in general, every position that becomes vacant will be analyzed by cabinet, and then we'll decide if we're going to fill it. So beginning next fall, and we all need to get ready for it isn't that far away. Once we see our enrollment on August 16th, really that first week of school is the best indicator. We'll do some analysis, of course, and figure out how many students we've lost, what our enrollment is, and then we'll start a very lengthy budget process like we did during the recession years. We kick it off in October. There will be study sessions, regular board meetings devoted to the budget cuts. We'll do online surveys of all staff. We'll hold meetings with the various bargaining units. And basically what happened in the recession years is we ended up with pages and pages of ideas about what to cut. And then it was up to us. Our job was to sift through those because, people will say, well, cut X. They don't understand that position's funded totally through federal funds, not the district's general fund. So we really have to sort through all the ideas, and literally, the last time I remember, it was 15 or 20 pages of ideas. We go through all those ideas. We come to the board with a list, and we categorize them. You know, we put it, because lots of the ideas that come in are the same, and we present those in study sessions and board meetings. So that basically will occur all year up till February, because we can't be where we are right now, not being able to make cuts like we need to, because the March 15th deadline is already passed.
You want to explain what the March 15th deadline is?
The March 15th deadline is required by Ed Code for certificated staff. So we have to notify certificated staff by March 15th if they're not coming back the next year. Obviously, we've passed that, so we can't cut a bunch of positions at this point. But that leads me to the document that is in your binders and on the table. We've heard the concerns expressed by GTA at prior board meetings about the LCAP. And so we spent a morning going through literally line item by line item, the entire 3-page, single-spaced line item list for LCAP. And we went through every one of those line items. And there are some positions that are vacant in the LCAP list. And so we're recommending not filling those. And I'm going to go through this list in just a minute, but I want to go through the process. So we spent time going through it line item by line item, and our goal was to come up with 800,000 or 900,000, which would be roughly 1% of a salary increase district-wide, and that was our goal. We got close. We got up to 700,000. Literally, we're doing this, you know, in June. So I'm really proud of Cabinet, because not only did we go through the LCAP line item by line item, but I asked them to come to that meeting prepared to recommend cuts to their departments. Again, this is late in the year to be doing that. And I'm proud of all of them. They came to the table with ideas. And again, I'll walk you through that in a minute. Yes.
I'd just like to interject that what we're talking about is the LCAP for 2018, 2019. The
Thanks.
LCAP for 2017-18 is spent.
The budget year is
Done.
over for 2017-18. Literally, the budget year is over.
Right.
We're done. And we can't make changes in that budget. It's over. But what we're talking about, and thank you, it's on the chart, we're talking about savings to next year's budget, 2018-19, going forward. And of course, the process that will unfold next year is about the next year's budget, 2019-20. But this year's done. So these cuts would apply to next year's budget, and these are both items that are listed in the LCAP and items that the departments came up with as we worked on this. I'm proud that we were able to come up with this amount at this late of time, and I did let both the GTA president and the lead of the GTA negotiations team know that we had done this. I didn't show them the list because at that point it wasn't posted, but I gave them a pretty good indication of the kind of things that are on the list and asked whether we might go back to the table to talk. And unfortunately, they didn't reciprocate that offer. So right now, we're still not going back to the table. But I think it's a good faith effort on our part to show that we are really trying as desperately as we can to find places in the budget to cut so that we can add more to our offer at the table. And this was a very hard thing for us to do. And I also want to mention that on a daily basis, literally, Paul Winslow and Alvaro Mesa are looking at our enrollment to see where we can make adjustments in staffing for next year. So in just the past week, we've collapsed teaching positions at a number of sites, I think 4 or 5 sites. And we've also combined some classes, not too many, thankfully, but we have definitely reduced FTEs at a number of sites, and we're going to continue to do that because we can't be overstaffed next year when we're going into difficult budget times like this. So I feel like we're doing everything that we can to show a good faith effort to make cuts and basically model the way for the direction that we're headed. So I wanted to go over this list really quick. So again, every department was asked to contribute. So the first item is basically restructuring our bond accountant fiscal services controller position. so that we can save some money there. We did have a resignation in the department, which allowed this, or a retirement in this department. Other district office reductions, as I mentioned, any vacant positions not being filled, so the PBIS coach position became a vacancy recently. We also looked at reducing some consultants. We felt we could reduce these for next year. An EL coach position, which is multi-funded and serves our secondary sites, it became vacant. The person accepted an administrative job outside of the district. So we'll be contracting out some of these services to the county office, but the overall savings is $60,000. And then we decided to eliminate one of the academic coach positions at the elementary level, and that will leave us with 3, and we'll still have the SEAL coaches, but it'll be 1 less than what we've enlisted in the LCAP. In ed services, we felt we could reduce some of the teacher release time. We would eliminate some money allocated to the sites that was in the LCAP, so they would have, it's not a major cut to the sites, but it's a slight cut to the allocations to the sites. And then, as you know, at the secondary level, what we have are instructional specialists. Typically, at the middle school, 0.17 is added to a full-time teacher's schedule, or, you know, in some way we configure their schedule based around their instructional position, specialist position. We have these at the middle and the high school in 4 areas, and we looked at all 4 areas. We knew we could not reduce the EL support. That is a major issue for the district, so we didn't touch those. NGSS, ISs, we felt with us going through an adoption and major changes in the standards that we couldn't do that. Common Core Specialist, we looked at who they were and their schedules, and it just wasn't going to work. So even though we didn't want to reduce any of them, I want to make that really clear, especially after we talked about technology all day. This is a hard one, but we're recommending reducing, it's basically the equivalent of a FTE, but it's pieces of people at the middle and the high school sites. HR, this is a hard one. You know our history in HR. We finally have a fully staffed HR office, and we're actually recommending, unfortunately, Kim is leaving us, and we're very sad about that in August. But
Kim is not leaving, Kim is retiring.
she's retiring in August. It's going to be tough. But after talking with Paul, and Paul made this recommendation after reviewing his entire staffing, we are going to restructure that position, and instead of director level, it'll be at a lower level, supervisory level. And then we also, again, Kim and Paul had recommended this. We had a vacancy in the enrollment secretary position, and that position will not be filled. It was a .375 position, and the duties will be combined with other positions. Special student services, you know this, you're going to see a chart. I believe, Alvaro, you have one about the encroachment again? Yes, in your presentation. As you know, our encroachment in special ed has just increased astronomically, really. And we also have encroachment from transportation that is affecting our budget. But we did look hard at this, and Anna proposed that we reduce some of the discretionary special ed costs and spending. And then after looking at our NPS placements, non-public school placements, knowing who's leaving, we felt comfortable reducing that by $100,000. So as you can see, the total estimated savings are $729,476, and these represent ongoing savings. And I want to make a point about that. It's been stated in public comments that we have money in books and supplies, for instance. And even if we did, those are all one-time funds, which we don't, by the way. All those funds are accounted for in the books and supply account. And again, if we even did have money in that account, it's one-time money. What we have to do are make reductions that are ongoing, and that's what this list represents. These are ongoing reductions that, unless we restore them, will go forward. And that's how it frees up some money for us to talk about. So we're recommending, and you're going to hear 2 presentations now, we're recommending that you approve the LCAP with the reductions on this list that are represented in the LCAP, and that these, as presented in the multi-year projection by Alvaro, will be reflected. these cuts. So we're also recommending that you approve the budget, 2018-19 budget, with these reductions. And now I know Alvaro is going to make a well, who's first? LCAP?
Okay.
Okay? So we'll have a brief presentation about the LCAP and then a budget report. Thank you.
Thank you, President Pisano, board members, Dr. Flores, and thank you for this time. As Dr. Flores, since she did such a wonderful job, so I have very little information to provide you. However, I do want to make a few comments about the LCAP process. So as you know, part of our job is to make sure that we are getting input from all of our stakeholders, and we do that in a variety of ways. Is it enough? It's never enough. We always want more input from people, but we do use multiple venues to get input. So for example, for our certificated staff, we do hold district office meetings. However, part of the requirement is that each site have a staff meeting dedicated to LCAP and provide us with input from that staff meeting as to what their suggestions are. And then we incorporate those into the LCAP plan. So as an example, some of the areas that have been added to the LCAP based on that input has been money specifically for science materials, for our CTE programs, for our visual performing arts programs, as well as for counselor training. Those items are new within the past 2 years based on that feedback from our staff. And we're constantly soliciting more feedback so we can see where we're going to spend this money. Now keep in mind, the money that is predominantly the focus of the LCAP plan is that supplemental and concentration funding that we have, which is approximately 12.5 million that we use for LCAP. So it does not go in detail about the entire district budget because that is the focus of the plan. So when you're looking at this, that is the amount of money that we're talking about. And in the cuts that Dr. Flores is mentioning, what we did is we went back to the areas where our certificated teachers said, these are areas that are hard. We would like these positions, however, we can do it in other ways. So for example, with the high school and middle school tech instructional specialists, we're looking at reworking that so that we can have lead teachers that would be getting a stipend, which is a greater reduction of funding rather than having the 0.2 or the 0.17. So we're constantly looking at new ways where we can get the work done that needs to be done, but in a different manner. So that we still meet the needs of the district. I also want to let you know that we have sent our draft proposal to the county office, and we have gotten feedback, and we're very happy with the feedback. In fact, what they've told us is it's the best plan that they've read out of all of the schools. So we're very happy about that and very pleased with that feedback. They did ask us to make some minor adjustments, so you know. Out of those adjustments, mainly it was some errors on our part where we had not rolled over the 2017-18 information, and so we just needed to fill in those boxes. But there was no new information. The way the plan is designed now, it used to be that we would give you one plan at a time per year. Now they want all 3 years, and they want to see that information for all 3 years. So as we were filling in, we forgot a couple of the 2017-18 and had to fill in those boxes. So we have done that, and we have sent that back. We've also sent them a copy of the possible reductions that are up for your approval today. And then once we have a formal approval, we then resubmit to the county, and then the county goes through their process of approval, which we normally get that feedback by August. Ready? Thank you.
Questions or comments?
We have,
Oh, I'm sorry.
we have public comments.
Thank you.
Katie Fleener.
Good evening, Superintendent, board members. My name is Katie Fleener, and I am part of the Gilroy Teachers Association. I'm here to ask that we're recommending that you do not adopt the LCAP at this time. A glance at some expenditures shows no change in planned action since 17-18, except for one new expenditure, the middle school supplemental counseling services. And our president, Jonathan Bass, has sent you guys a graph to your emails for you to review some items for consideration from the LCAP. And thank you, Superintendent Flores, for your presentation. That's very helpful to hear, kind of what's happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. Thank you. So currently, we have a significant morale problem that are tied to spending decisions. GTA's participation in the LCAP process has dwindled to 2 people over the last 4 years. The GTA president and vice president. This does not meet the spirit of the legal requirement to engage stakeholders. 85 out of 577 GTA bargaining unit members have resigned since September of 2017. This high turnover speaks at least in part to cost of living, the quality of personnel that GUSD attracts, and overall job satisfaction. 483 out of 577 GTA unit members, that's 84%, have voted to authorize a strike in the fall of 2018 if a negotiated agreement is not reached. Your LCAP adoption vote represents an opportunity for GTA and the GUSD School Board to work together to turn this situation around. If you choose not to adopt the LCAP on June 14th, some bad things will happen. The summer recruitment push will be left in limbo because there will be questions. Sorry. I just lost my notes. There will be questions about which positions will have appropriate funding. According to my conversation with Dr. Flores, the County Office of Education may intervene, and some GTA unit members will not know for sure what their position will be for 2018-2019. But if you choose not to adopt the LCAP in June, some beneficial things will happen. GTA unit members will believe that the GUSD board is taking steps to make compensation a higher priority. This will strengthen a positive relationship between staff and the board. GTA unit members will receive confirmation that the GUSD board listens to their concerns about earning livable wages in the Santa Clara Valley, strengthening morale. The GUSD board will be combining efforts with GTA to improve spending efficiency and ensure that every effort is being made to effectively evaluate educational programs. And finally, you will be providing an opportunity for GUSD administration to go back through the LCAP item by item and look for expenditures that can be cut because they do not have evidence to verify their intended outcome. Thank you.
You nailed 3 minutes exactly.
Questions or comments? Board members? I'd like to make a comment. First, mic's on.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't confuse me. What was I going to say? I really, I hope that the cuts that Dr. Flores and her staff made, $729,000 in cuts is nothing to sneeze at. And I certainly hope that GTA looks at that and sees and starts to believe that Gilroy Unified School District is indeed serious as those actions speak much louder, I believe, than just pieces of paper. And to do that immediately after a board meeting and at this late date speaks volumes. And I'm disappointed that that didn't result in GTA deciding to come back to the table. That being said, that's their choice, your choice. That's all I'm going to say. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Trustee Good.
In response to the union's request, because we received this exact, what you read by your president, that we not adopt the LCAP, we asked for what would happen. And what would happen was, number one, funds to the district are cut off. So what the union is asking us to do doesn't make any sense unless no one wants to get paid, because that's what's going to occur. It's required under Education Code 42127A that a budget be adopted approving LCAP on or before July 1st. That's the law. And it's also the law under Education Code 42128, that if we don't adopt LCAP, that the county superintendent of schools, quote, shall not make any apportionment of state or county school money for the particular school district for the current year. That's a statute. So that's what would occur. That's the bad thing that would occur. And that's pretty bad if the spigot of funds are turned off. Secondly, Government Code 1222 says that every willful omission to perform any duty enjoined by law upon any public officer or person holding any public trust or employment where no special provision is made for punishment of such delinquency is punishable as a misdemeanor. So obviously, I can't support that request. It's against the law and it could be criminal, so. No.
No.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, I am going to vote to approve the LCAP, and that's why. I was trying to give you my rationale.
Any other questions or comments? Trustee Midgard.
I would just like to thank you for the effort that you went to. I know these cuts aren't easy, these proposed cuts, because I've been in the district through, and so has Linda and Jaime and Mark, when we have had to do this. And it's a very daunting task to decide what to cut, because every one of these positions, there are ramifications, obviously. If you cut one of the elementary academic coaches, that's going to affect somebody. It's probably going to affect, unless there's a good fill-in plan. So I just wanted to thank you and tell you I do understand how difficult this is to do.
Thank you. I'd like to make one other comment, which is, even by, should we vote to pass both LCAP and budget tonight, as we are mandated to do by statute, that doesn't mean that changes can't be made in the future.
Correct.
This is not etched in stone. So it is a fluid document, and it would be, I think, foolish not to remember that.
And as
This is not the
Dr.
end of LCAP and the budget.
Right, and as Dr. Flores mentioned, as positions are open, we are looking at all of those positions and reevaluating and seeing if we can do things in a different manner to still support the district as a whole. And also, as that reminder, after the approval from the board, it goes to the county. The county then, as did happen last year, can make some additional recommendations and bring them back. So it absolutely is a fluid document, and we can make adjustments to it if necessary.
Yes, Pace.
The compliment from the county about ours being the best is nice to hear, so good job, team who worked on this. I really appreciate that.
We were very excited about that, yes.
So I guess with all of this, with the teacher input, I think that's probably just what's really coming to light is everyone's doing diligent work and working hard, but somehow teacher input isn't being given. And it's not being, and as a result, not being heard, right? Because it's not being given for lack of communication or opportunity or what have you. It's not out there. How can we make that happen? I don't want to have more meetings. I'm thinking there's got to be some sort of active teacher participation in it at some role. I know we have committees of teachers that do things. Is that a possibility?
Well, we asked for input from the sites, and when we did this before, we asked for principals to lead a discussion with their site about cuts, and we can attend those meetings. One thing that was really the most effective way we got input last time was an online survey. It's very easy. You don't have to come to the district office. You don't have to talk to us if you don't want to, but we got a lot of feedback on the online surveys. So we had some open-ended questions, and many teachers and classified staff responded to that and gave us input. We can schedule meetings here at the district office. The first 2 years of the LCAP, I participated in some of those meetings. We met with, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 teacher groups right here in this room, and I participated in those, and we made changes to the LCAP.
And I think those are extremely valuable. I'm just wondering, is there anything more official, more formal, more ongoing that could be implanted? Kind of like we have the calendar committee, which is, I know, a big headache, but teachers are directly
That
involved
only
in
meets
that.
once or twice a
Yeah.
year. I don't know, we can talk about it.
Right, and one thing that we did try this year as part of the request from our teachers was to collect notes from each site, because teachers said, we're already meeting here, can we incorporate this? So we did ask our principals to facilitate those meetings. They were formal meetings. We do have the minutes from those and the suggestions from the teachers. And again, those were incorporated into the LCAP plan. So yes, as I stated earlier, we're always looking to do more and see what we can do to make sure that everyone feels that their input is being heard and that we're getting input from all of our stakeholders and not just one segment of the population. And our assistant superintendent had a comment about that process too.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Superintendent. Good evening, members of the public. Part of the process, going back to Trustee Bass's comment, we will be developing a budget development calendar for the 1920 fiscal year, and that'll undertake as soon as September. You'll come back to the board at least once to have an opportunity to calendar these meetings where we have various study sessions on the budget for the 1920 year as an opportunity for us to study potential cuts. Not just cuts to figure out what we can do in terms of our priorities, our own board priorities, your priorities board, but also to figure out, well, with decline, and do we have to keep up with the revenue loss? So we really have to take a global look at our entire budget, not just among the shifting priorities that you can under your jurisdiction and authority do in any given year, but also on top of it, because if we decline again by 250 students, that's another $2.2 million that I haven't factored in my MYP. The multi-year projection is assuming flat enrollment, which is not growth, no decline, right? So it's real importance to us to come back with a development of a budget calendar that will encompass potential cuts for decline, but also potential cuts if you want to reprioritize the budget. The budget is 87% total salaries and benefits on the unrestricted side. That pie can only grow so much before we absorb every penny we have and we can't keep the lights on. So naturally, we can't ever get to that place where we're 100% salary and benefits, because that's just not possible. But there is, of course, an opportunity to shift our priorities around within that rough percentage.
Trustee Good.
One of the things I might suggest, I mean, we've heard from the teachers' union that during the LCAP process, there was little or no participation, 2 people. And the reason that was given by them for that was because they were frustrated that their input was not taken into account in previous stakeholder meetings. So if that's the case, whether it's definitely the perception. Whether it's a reality or not, I don't know. But that's definitely the perception. That's what they're saying. Maybe we could work on establishing some sort of formal feedback loop so that, you know, I'm a teacher and I say, well, let's cut this position. It'll give us this much money. Okay, well, if we don't do that, why can't we do that, or why didn't we do that? Did it come from another funding? Is it specialized money, or is it something we're mandated to? But some sort of feedback so that if nothing else, if the suggestions aren't taken, at least there's not a feeling that the suggestion has been ignored.
We did that on the budget recession years, during the recession years with the budget, and we developed a document. I can send you the last one so you can see a model of and there was definitely several columns that did exactly that. So the suggestion would be cut position X, and we would say, we agree, cut position X, or we'd say position X is funded entirely out of federal funds and will have no impact on the general fund, which is what we're talking about. Or, you know, there were lots of comments about those, because there were suggestions about, we'll do this, and, you know, we'd study it and it couldn't be done. And a perfect example was, that's when we cut transportation. A number of people said, why doesn't the district cut transportation? You don't have to provide it. At that time, we were transporting, I think, about 3,000 students. Now we transport pretty much special ed and a few students that live in East Gilroy that are, you know, a long ways from their school. we don't transport many regular ed students at all. It's mostly special ed. But that came out of those years. Another related to transportation was charge parents. Sounds like a great idea. When we started costing it out, parents would be paying an incredible amount of money to have their kids transported to school, and it just wasn't a viable option. We cut the adult ed program during those years. I think you'll recall it was a really difficult decision and had major impacts that we're recovering from today. We finally have a viable adult ed program back in our district, thanks to the consortium, not funded by the district, but we cut the adult ed program. There were, I don't know if you remember, lots of adult learners in this room crying and upset about that.
We were also one of the very last districts in the area to cut
Right.
adult ed.
Right.
Because all the other districts had cut it years before.
Right.
But we had held on to it.
Right.
By our fingernails.
Right, and it's only back, so everybody understands, because of consortium funding with Gavilan and others, it doesn't cost our general fund. But we have a very effective, and some of us were at the graduation 2 weeks ago with 50 graduates, which brings tears to your eyes when adults go back to school and get their diploma in their 30s, 40s. One was 64 or 66. So anyway, those are just examples. There were a lot of other positions that were cut, programs that were cut during those years. And on our chart, we did have columns where we explained why we supported it or we couldn't do it for whatever
So
reason.
if we could incorporate that process in the LCAP with regards to the stakeholder input, then everybody would know what the suggestion was, and not just that it was not adopted, but if it wasn't adopted, why?
I agree with Mark. That's a good idea.
And as part of the LCAP, there is the section that includes the stakeholder input and what changes have occurred based on that input. So we can obviously look and beef that up even more, so that not only does it state what the changes are in the LCAP plan based on that input, but the suggestions, and we do add a few things in there of the suggestions that we were not able to fund and why, but we can basically expand that and make it clearer and send that section out specifically to all of our certificated and classified and para units.
I would really appreciate that, because I also hear the same, and I was just like, it's a 123-page document, and I suspect that there's no one other than a board member that might have read 122 pages.
It's a wonderful reading material. Great.
You know,
So-
people are talking about it at the county.
I know.
That's right.
So they may or may not know that
Correct.
something was put in there,
And the
so.
changes that are made, because they,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but Gina used to highlight changes in our board policies for us, so that we wouldn't have to reread materials and see what changes were made, because otherwise it's impossible to know what's been added or cut, and really difficult to follow, so those kinds of things would be really helpful as well.
And like I said, there is that section in there, but we can definitely call it out and expand it.
And
Thank you.
can you do that now? I mean, like, not right now, but I mean,
Not by the end of the evening.
No.
but definitely.
but
Tomorrow's
within the
fine.
next week or two?
Definitely, yes, within the next week or two. I
That would be
definitely
great.
can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Trustee
I want
McCarty?
to make a comment that this whole LCFF LCAP is great, because it's what we asked for years. For years and years, we used to say, well, why doesn't Sacramento just send us the money and let us decide what we
Be
need
careful
to
what you
do,
ask for.
what we need to do for our district. So that's exactly what happened, and so it's been awkward, and we've had some stumbles, and I think we're getting better at it every year. It has nothing to do with the bottom line or what positions are intact or what. The process is really good, and if we're not including enough teachers, we should. And then the comments about the budget, I mean, we talk about the budget all the time. And who else would talk about the budget except Alvaro and us, right? I mean, regular people in the course of their lives just don't talk about the budget. And even though we look at it a lot, we still have questions of him all the time. And so I think there's this great amount of misinformation out there about what we have to spend and how we can spend it. So I think that's part of the issue too.
Definitely.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, trustee Rosso.
I just wanted to, again, acknowledge and commend staff for making the effort, the additional effort that we requested and to take a harder look and to come back with some significant reductions in the LCAP. And it's a hard, you know, it's making some hard choices, and particularly when we know that we have declining revenues coming in forward, that I think that is an amazing that we are able to squeeze that in short notice, being able to get to where we're at. So I do want to commend staff and the effort that was done, and I think it shows great good faith. Thank you.
Any other question, comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 2018-19 budget adoption. Mr. Mesa.
Thank you, Madam President. Now that you've approved an LCAP, I have an opportunity to present the budget. I'll try to be brief and touch on the highlights as I understand them. This afternoon, the legislature, my report said that they have an approved budget, but that the trailer bills will follow, and the governor will actually have signs of these trailer bills to sign down to June 26. So we're not going to get any actionable information for about a month on the budget. So the budget presented for you tonight is based on the May revision, as we discussed in the public hearing. So while it's true that the governor can take his victory lap and say, look, I've fully funded the local control funding formula. You recall that the first year of implementation was 13-14. That was following 5 to 6 years of worth of cuts, where Gilroy Unified alone cut $20 million leading up to that 07-08 year. So what does full implementation mean? And this is important for the public and everybody to understand, is we're essentially getting back to being repaid back those cuts and back to the purchasing power in 2018-19 year, going back to 07-08 levels, where California as a state ranked 46 in the nation in per pupil spending. So that's the benchmark, and that's the perspective that I like to leave you with as this fully funded method of California public schools. Even though California is the 6th largest economy in the world, we fund public education 46 in the nation. And even after a substantive change of our school finance system, historic one, I think for over 30 plus years, we're still left 46 in the nation. And I'll highlight a couple of propositions constitutional-wise that really doesn't allow California to do anything more than that, because it suppresses the funding for schools, unfortunately. So again, even though it's fully funded and we feel good about the last several years of positive revenues, right? I'll put it into the perspective, and that's when we were growing. All those additional revenues and paybacks that we got for all those cuts, we fell dollar for dollar because our enrollment and our ADA, average daily attendance, were at least flat, if not growing by 40, 30 kids. Everything changes, and as our superintendent mentioned, the declining enrollment is devastating, devastating, and you cannot cut fast enough. So even under the best situation, we could have seen a very different scenario under a declining enrollment. This is the chart that our superintendent mentioned, going back to 1996, where we started a long history of growing. This is enrollment. So there's two key concepts. We're funded on average daily attendance, which is average daily attendance from the first day of first day of attendance, which is mid-August, all the way through mid-April. So after mid-April, students can call sick or do whatever. We're not actually getting paid on that. Obviously, it hurts our test scores, so we don't want to say that. But for funding purposes, really, it stops in mid-April. This is enrollment. So you can see the 193 drop from last year to this year. This is enrollment again. And obviously, the enrollment correlates to your average daily attendance because they have a positive correlation there. So this is the actual average daily attendance for the prior year. You can see that 10,800 and I'll just say 89 students. Over here, 10,639 students. Pardon the decimals, but these are actual calculations as we report them to the California Department of Ed. We're not fractionalizing students. These are just the actual accurate P2 numbers that are final. So these are not projections. And so we get our average daily attendance per student, multiply that by the 239 student loss, I'm rounding, and it's the $2.2 million that we're referring to as a revenue loss. This is ongoing revenue, right? That I have $2.2 million less in 18-19, and guess what? Every COLA, that 2.2 cost of living adjustment, pardon me, would have grown that $2.2 million, right? So pretend we didn't lose those kids. I would have recognized $2.2 million this year, maybe $5 million the following year, $2.8 million the third year out in my multi-year projection. So it really hurts because the expenditures are going to grow by step and column. They're going to grow by the STRS and pension obligations that we have to pay as an employer, but my revenue stream is declining. So just on the natural, expenditures were going to outpace revenues on the natural, even if we're flat funded, because of those pension obligations, STRS and PERS, right, employer costs, step and column increases that we have to pay as the employer. And now that we're quote unquote fully funding, we're only getting the cost of living adjustment on those revenues, no longer these huge chunks of IOU for those cuts going back to 07, 08. So on top of that now, and I say on the natural, there were expenditures were going to outpace the revenues because now we have to worry about the declining enrollment. That's just a game changer and could be completely devastating. As you can see, a single year, a drop of $2.2 million. This is the birth rate. Dr. Flores also mentioned that. She mentioned the county birth rate statistic. This is our own historical birth rate data by zip code. So you can see at the peak, 1,019 students here. And this is the latest from our demographer on the birth counts in 2016. This happens to me every time. And you can see I'm clearly standing here, so I am not touching the laptop.
This time Maribel. Yeah, she wasn't here last time.
So we've got to fix that. It's getting old. So it's 827 birth counts. And the key thing that it's also relevant here is we used to get about 87% of those births eventually coming to Gilroy Unified because we're not going to get a 1-to-1 ratio, right? We would love it if we would, or even a over 1 ratio on that, but we're about getting 81% of all the births in the 95020 zip code to eventually come to Gilroy. So not only is the statistics of the birth counts dropping, but the rate at which we're seeing those students come to Gilroy is also declining. So bad news on top of bad news is how I would like to end that. I alluded to the propositions that by California Constitution drive and suppress the funding of schools. It's because Prop 13 established the base year values, right? Remember that snapshot of revenue limits? We were a low level funded revenue limit back in 1978 when this was done. A whole year when I was 1 year old. And ever since then, property taxes were only allowed to basically charge a 2% max and with some adjustments for bonds and et cetera. And then Prop 98 passed in 1988. And was intended to increase, right? That was the thought, that it was a minimum. So the legislature back then had a thought of, let's protect schools. We should have a mandate of a minimum funding level, and it got passed. But the thought at that point in time was to essentially help schools to get us off the floor. And instead, the practical application of the law has been to treat this as a ceiling. So, and in bad years, it's manipulation, sometimes grossly manipulation of what gets counted towards Prop 98 so that they can easily meet the minimum formula guarantee and then spend it on other areas of the budget. And in the bad times, from '07, '08, all the way to 2013, other areas of the budget got a pass. So I'm picking on corrections. They got a pass when they were supposed to cut the budget. Education always took the cut, the share of the cut. Other areas of the budget got a pass for whatever reason. But we took the cut during the hard times and disproportionately. And it's because of these two laws that are in the California Constitution. So that's the statistic there. We're 46th in the nation per pupil spending. And, you know, this can vary a place or two depending on whose study you're looking at. But it's no place to celebrate, 46, 47 in the nation. This is just Prop 98 funding. I believe that still holds, 78.4, 73, $78.3 billion. I think that's what the legislature agreed upon. I'll highlight when I get to the multi-year projection the two variables that may be different from the actual budget that the governor is going to sign or has signed. This is just a reminder that the LCFF, the local control funding formula, was implemented in 13-14. If you remember a year before, he was toying around with a student-weighted funding formula that tanked. But basically, this is, I guess, the second and variation of that concept that took place, and it is our law. And according to the original plan, we were supposed to meet that magical year of funding levels of 07, 08 adjusted for inflation in 8 years. And the governor, to his credit, he's getting us there 2 years in advance. But again, it's nothing to celebrate because we're still almost last in California. So narrowing in on our revenues, going back to the first year of implementation, we have grown, right? But that's repaying. Remember, you have to take into account we took $20 million worth of cuts, $20 million worth of cuts here in Gilroy. So you have to add that 20 just to get us back to where we were, and then count on the fact that we had some increases, right? The pensions weren't included in there. The special ed, transportation, underfunding, you know, we had to account for as well. And on top of that, the requirement to spend $12.5 million on the targeted group by law wasn't there before. So it isn't quite dollar for dollar new gain that we're getting, even when you adjust for inflation. This is just a pie chart of what total revenues, 128 million. The only thing that I like to mention in there that's Prop 30 is about 2% of our revenues. Once Prop 30, and this is on income tax of high income earners, once it expires, I think we have got about a decade more of that, because remember this used to be Prop 30, now I think it's Prop 55. Once that expires, because those are temporary taxes, then it shifts the obligation to the state. So we could, of course, everything's cyclical in the economy, but we could at one point or another see the state really, there we go again, hit with two factors. On a recession, what happens? People spend less, they earn less, right? The less capital tax gains because, say, the market plummets, as an example. That help of the property taxes, of the income earners goes down. The state economy goes into a recession in this example, and then the state at the same time's obligation is still the same, but they have less revenue. So that's when you see the state kicking in these deficit factors from the past, basically an IOU, where they owe us $1, but they give us 80 cents for every dollar. And the next slide is the total expenditures. So this is a total general fund. And I think what's more important than just looking at the total, because the total includes federal grants, state grants, not things that were at our disposal to spend on salaries, because, for instance, routine restricted maintenance is in there, right? Federal dollars are in there. But to me, what's more important is to look at the unrestricted general fund, where the salary obligations come out, and what increases that we can afford on an ongoing basis have to come is from the general fund unrestricted side. And so when you look at this, and this is excluding, of course, carryover, because we don't budget carryover in adopted budgets. So it's really easy to see what's ongoing. And you can just take a look at the share of our total expenses and salaries and benefits in the budget without carryover. It's real crystal clear. It's a simple calculation. Is 87% of our total expenses. So that's what my comment was before, is there's so much that that pie can absorb before we cannot operate. Can't keep the lights on, PG&E, basic operational expenses, supplies, just basic stuff that we have to have outside of salary and benefits. I won't spend too much on this time because I know you've seen this, but it is a substantial cost. It's an unfunded increases in obligation to schools that both STRS and PERS did. If you go back to this year, PERS was 0, and this is when I came into school finance. And then we really started worrying when this peak went up, but then that's nowhere near where we're projected to be. Essentially, that says 26 out of every dollar, 26 cents out of every dollar, we're going to have to budget for PERS. And that's just one of the many statutory rates that we have. It doesn't include workers' comp and other factors. When I throw all that in, right now, today, we're easily over 22, 23% on the classified side, about 17% on the certificated side. These are essentially taxes on the employer. If you look at those rates, they go up to 20 and 26%. You add all the other statutory rates, we're going to be approaching 35 cents on every dollar on statutory rates. So those are just mandates. These are just the historical and future projected rates. CalSTRS, of course, takes legislative action to change those rates. CalPERS just takes a meeting with the board to change them. Special education, these are all expenses, so federal sources, local sources, state sources. On the budget side, we're projecting a $23.5 million budget. The estimated actuals to close out the year, this will vary because it always does at closeout, but we're projecting that to be $22.4 million. But everything else in blue, they're not projections, they're actuals. So you can see just shy of 12 million in 10-11, and we close the actual 16-17 year being 21.4. Narrowing in on what the state does not fund special ed and what they should be funding, it's a significant gap. So unfortunately for us, while we're declining overall in the student population, we're not seeing that in the special ed area. And more importantly, the underfunding is just going to continue from the state and federal government. So that's just a historical chart of our actual contributions. Everything in blue is actual. They're not projections. They're actual. From $4.5 million in 12-13, and this is the first year of LCFF, but LCFF did not fund that, $8 million, all the way to $13 million almost in 16-17, and we're projecting to be 13.7 at the end of this fiscal year, 17-18, and it did have to increase 14.8 million in the budget cycle. This is just the Prop 30 and Prop 55 revenues, so that's the point right here. Prop 30 had a sales and income tax component, so this was a state relief essentially. This 15 million, the state didn't have to pony that up to Gilroy Unified. Our taxes cover for that. Now that's down to 3 million, so that shifts the burden to the state. Capital tax gains are highly volatile, and so you'll see a chart later on that says we're at a peak and all-time high in capital tax gains. Once that drops, it limits state revenues. Once that drops, the state will see a higher obligation on their books that they won't have revenue to pay. And that's when the cuts will start coming to education. Multi-year projection, so I'll highlight just the key things that at this point I can just say the reported budget deal, because that's as far as I know on the budget at the state level. This $3 million of one-time funds looks like that's going to be 1.7 million. So it will change our multi-year projection, but so that's the downside. On the good news, though, it looks like the ongoing pieces, every year, ongoing revenue, it's going to increase to Gilroy Unified. So this year, I'm going to be able to add $460,000 this year, $460,000 every year, essentially, on an ongoing basis. So by the time I get to that third year, we're going to make up that $1.3 million that I lost here as a one-time basis. It doesn't change the 18-19 year because we did not budget the expense. We just simply let that fall through the fund balance to meet our reserves. So ultimately, by the time I come back to you with a revised budget, you will essentially see very similar reserve levels, but understand that this 18-19 reserve will be lower because I have $1.3 million less here in one-time infusion of revenues, but I get $467,000 here, that'll essentially make up that difference. Bottom line, by the time we look at the 2021 year, we'll be in the same place, essentially. Obviously, it's better to have ongoing revenue than one-time funds, so I think we welcome that news if it's truly going to happen. This is the $12.4 million that serves the needs of the supplemental and concentration funds, the low-income students, the targeted group, essentially, foster and English language learners. We're required now that it's fully implemented to account for the full amount, and we have. And so one of the comments that our director, Deb Padilla, mentioned is the county loved our LCAP, and a part of that was because we detailed this $12.4 million. There's a very technical piece in our account string called the manager code. You could pull it up by goal, and you'll get to that $12.4 million that demonstrates how we're spending these funds. So we feel very proud of that. It was a lot of work on their part and our fiscal team to do that, and I commend everybody involved in it as part of it, because there's a high degree of accountability, and that's the local control funding formula and what it was all about. So again, the summary of the multi-year projection, this number here will look lower because again, I basically have to take away $1.3 million here at 467, so this will change, but this number will essentially be the same. That 6.94 by the time we hopefully get to an agreement that's similar to what you have already approved for the classified, confidentials, and management, will be around the 7% reserve by the time that's all said and done. So luckily for us, the reduction of one-time revenues is truly offset by the ongoing revenues because we did not budget for them as expenditures in the base year. So in the past, you've seen me budget 50% of the revenues here and here. This time, I wanted to account for the entire revenue, but recognize that the variable of one-time revenues was a risk. And so we did not budget for the expense, but we certainly recognized the revenue and let that fall through the ending balance. So just expect some fluctuation in the reserves for the interim year, immediate year especially, but not in the out year where it matters. So the 7% reserve will be there with the revised budget. So I don't want to spend too much time here because I don't know the specifics of the budget that they signed today, but obviously the risk to the economy is always there, the volatility of capital tax gains. Nobody can predict, and all we can say is that we're at an all-time high, and it does look like this with capital tax gains. And of course, declining enrollment locally here is something that Mr. Winslow, Assistant Super of HR, and I are very worried about, and we're hands-on on that. And I want to really thank him and commend him for doing that because I just take I can sleep at night knowing that somebody, an expert of master schedules and a former principal, is by our side looking at it, and he could really also be a CBO because he is as fiscally responsible as I think I am. So I think we make a really good team looking over these numbers and trying not to be overstaffed, doing really fiscal diligence for you, board, and our superintendent. So this is the chart I was hoping I included. This is capital tax gains, so you can see how it fluctuates. And this is just a span of 5 years, but it can quickly turn into a situation where the state has to make up what's $107 billion here, and in 2 years is 133, and as quickly as that goes up is as quickly as it can go down. That's really there for a purpose of illustration. So yes, the state can fully fund us now. Take that with a grain of salt, but this is why. So I'm required also to share this with you. I shared it with you in the public hearing. I do want to highlight that I'm setting aside here, and I want to highlight that $2.4 million because we have not reached a tentative agreement on all bargaining units, but it is there because we hope to get, some kind of agreement in the short term. And so that represents 2 full years of the 2 bargaining units that we have not reached agreement. So for 17-18 and 18-19. So when we close our books, expect a high ending balance because we have not reached agreements with those 2 units, but that's why I flag them out, because you should expect to have a high ending balance because we have this obligation. And I like to put it in terms of an obligation. So that's why it's there. And you can see the remaining unsubstantiated reserve balance is 0 because the remaining piece, now that's high because we're not getting 3 million anymore. We subtract a million 7 from $1,000,003 from that amount. So the reserve level for 18-19 will be a little lower, but overall, as I said, we're going to be right at the 7% reserve. We've already went through the Appendix 1. With your approval of the budget, these adjustments will be made. Next step is obviously we're going to get information on the enacted budget. Outcome of negotiations is to be determined with 2 bargaining units, GTA and the para-educators. And then the next steps is for the county to review both the LCAP, which they've already kind of begun, and the budget, and revise our budget accordingly, as we always do in the multi-year projection. So the recommendation here, just to be clear tonight, is to approve the budget as presented, but with Appendix 1, just so that it lines up with the LCAP.
We have a request for public comment on this item.
I have some questions. Can I use this to ask questions?
No, you have to go up there.
But I can use this time to ask him questions? Or
No.
does it have to be comment? Okay.
No, just a
Sorry,
comment.
I just have some questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members? Trustee Rosso.
First of all, I want to, again, commend our staff for doing an exceptional job in keeping us, keeping our business finances, our budget in good order. I do have a question about, we had a decline in enrollment. We keep talking about the declining enrollment, but you're not projecting for a decline again this year. And that almost surprises me a little bit, in that we normally kind of become a little extra cautious, but we aren't projecting that for the coming year.
Right, because our demographer obviously didn't project to lose 250 kids coming into the year, but we also want to make sure that we're not going to be looking at being overly conservative. I know, believe me, the dangers of not projecting a decline, but we're going to be looking at the fall numbers, the August numbers, very closely, so we can get a jump start in terms of our trends and see, are we really seeing another year of 100 or 200 decline, and what will that mean? The base year is locked in because I can always, the base year meaning 18-19 fiscal year is locked in because I know what our prior P280A is based on. It's based on the higher of current or last year. So I have a protection for 18-19 that it cannot be lower than I budgeted. So that's my comfort level. We already know we're going to be having a lengthy budget development process for the 19th cycle year to address any cuts that if we have another 300 decline, I can plan for 19-20. I have a downside protection for the 18-19 year that I know it's my P2 number that I share with you on a slide. So that's why I have no concerns of being overly aggressive or guessing, because I want to take the guessing game out of it. I want to say, here's my revenue, no guessing here, full revenue, none of this 50% stuff. I just want to take that guessing game out because we're heading into, as you heard, tough negotiations. And so the less I have to guess, the better it is for all parties, I believe. And so when you take that out of the equation, I know I have downside protection for the following year. So I didn't think it was necessary at this point because I know we're going to have a lengthy budget development process for the 19-20 year.
Thank you.
So when you're in decline, it hits you the next year. So what we're worried about is the following year.
Yes.
Trustee McCart, did you have?
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments or questions. I remember when LCFF came out, and the literature that I read said that the reason the state went in this direction is because No Child Left Behind just wasn't working. No Child Left Behind was not closing the gap. So the state said, here's your money. You figure out what you need for your district, because what you need is different than, let's say, Cupertino needs. So you figure it out. And so there is still a gap, but when Director Padilla said that's the most important part of this plan, you said something like that, the total supplemental and concentration funds. You said that piece is what really, and we get 12 million for that, the population that is English learners.
Socioeconomic.
Socioeconomic.
Disadvantaged and foster.
And foster youth. So we really need to keep an eye on what we're doing for those students. Now, is that your interpretation of why we switched to LCFF? I know it was 4 years ago, but it's important for this discussion.
Yes, Trustee McGard, that's exactly correct. If you remember the student weighted formula, one of the key weights was for that exact purpose. The neediest students, the neediest districts should get more resources because of that.
Right. Okay, now, from what you just said, it looks like on one of your charts, 38 cents of every dollar in our district goes to employer contributions back to STRS and PERS. Because if you put the 16% together and 18% together.
Yeah, so let me switch
That's
back.
an interesting way to think about it. Here's a dollar, but oh, by the way.
But they're two different
Right.
populations.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you put them together, it's still contributions that our district has to make back to the state, correct?
And those have significantly increased.
Right, so let me, I'm
It's not numbered,
trying
but
to
it's
get to that.
highlight of
Well, that's it.
expenditures.
So on PERS, if you look at the top end of that line, because this is the easiest point of reference, the 26%,
Right.
that's only PERS projected to be 2024, right? You have to add workers' compensation and other statutory rates. So by that time, this 26% could easily be 32, 34% for classified folks. So it's not like you add this one and this one. For the STRS, this 20% is just one of 3 or 4 statutory rates. So that 20% here could be easily 27% overall
even worse.
by that year, right? So it's really 26 cents out of every dollar just for pensions, plus other workers' comp, plus other statutory rates that we have to pay as the employer. And right now, today, in 1819, even though this for PERS employees, so like your typical custodian, even though this is 18%, we're really paying almost 24% in all statutory rates today for that employee out of every dollar. And similarly to the STRS rate, we're paying higher than that on top of it because there's other statutory rates. So the takeaway there is we're not getting the help the local control funding formula thought initially to give us in 13-14. So once you say, well, are we really truly fully funding public schools? We're not. Nobody accounted for this increases in pension obligations.
Right. But I mean, it makes sense to me, because where else is that money going to come from? Right? I mean, these are unfunded liabilities. It's the same problem that cities are facing, that they can't give raises to their firemen because they've got these high pension costs. It's the same kind of idea. So, and then your volatility, I love that word, because I feel like we're always operating in a vacuum of volatility. Because we're not sure what, I mean, right now, sure, property taxes are coming in like crazy because, you know, the properties are so expensive, but what is it gonna look like in 5 years? So, that and special ed, to me, that's a big one.
District, just backfill, right?
Yes, basically right. So when, no, so the basic formula is property taxes plus state aid equals your entitlement, right? So when in an economy in a recession, state aid drops because, say, capital tax gains take a plummet. So state aid, our entitlement stays the same. Their revenues take a hit. So that's when you see cuts, is because property taxes are property taxes, and in a state economy, sometimes a bubble housing could cause a collapse, right? But let's just assume the housing market stays the same, property taxes stay the same. But in an economic recession, the state takes a hit, capital tax gains go down as an example, yet they still have the same obligation. They cannot fund everybody at that same level, so they take a deficit factor and IOU and start implementing cuts to us. And that's when they start manipulating Prop 98 to give us less, to essentially check the box. At the worst case scenario, the legislature can suspend Prop 98 and altogether never pay it.
Thank you, and thank you for putting this together for us.
You're welcome.
It's good.
Alvaro, I have a question on, back to the PERS and STIRS. So it's 20% and 26%, looking at that, if I,
Back.
and my question is, 20% and 26% of what?
Oh.
Not of every dollar that we get in, but of the percentage for
So salary,
salaries.
so if I spend $1 on salary, these are the cents that equate to
Right.
that dollar.
So it's the amount, it's the percentage of.
Salary.
Of salary.
Right.
Total compensation or just
Salary,
salary?
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to be
So
clear.
naturally, increases to the base salary accelerate that cost.
Right. Any other questions or comments, board members? I will entertain a motion.
Move approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously passes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Mesa. 10C, Student Service End-of-Year Report. Anna Polito, Director of Student Services.
Okay. Good evening, President Pacino, Vice President Pace, board members, Dr. Flores.
Hannah, can you turn the mic
oh,
towards
sorry.
you? Thanks.
Good evening. Tonight, I'm going to give you more of a year in review update on special education this year. Before I get started, I want to thank my team for coming and introduce my team. We have Tammy Irvine, our program specialist for the elementary, Adrian Summers for our high school and post-secondary program specialist, and I'm pleased to introduce my counterparts from Morgan Hill Unified. We've done a lot of work together this year, and we look forward to continuing it next year. We have Jessica Patterson, a program specialist, and Jenna Middleton, their director of special education.
Thank you for being here.
I don't understand why you're at somebody else's board meeting, but it's really nice that you came.
We're a team. Oop, my thing isn't, let's see. What did I do here? Okay. Good. Am I hitting the right one? Okay. So the first slide is looking at our student population in here. And, across all disabilities that are eligible for special education services, we have seen an increase. We've even seen an increase in some of our disabilities, which we would consider more of our low incidence, like our deaf, hard of hearing, visually, and intellectually disabled, where we've really also seen an increase is in our emotionally disturbed population. We have also in our other health impaired and specific learning disability. Some of the discussion with the other health impaired is that is more of a broader category. So some of our students that could possibly have characteristics, or it's not necessarily black and white as far as how they're reaching eligibility under maybe emotional disturbance or autism, sometimes are meet eligibility of other health impaired. We've also seen an increase in our students that are being qualified under autism. We're seeing that as an increase despite enrollment here in Gilroy, but also across California. So many districts are hit with the, as Mr. Mesa explained, increase in special education students qualifying for special education as district enrollments are decreasing, and it is really with districts are seeing this in the budget in the shortfall of funding. One of the things that we have really looked at, and I know it was a priority, is our students and the services that they're receiving. What we've really looked at closely is our students that are receiving speech and language services, and that the students that are receiving speech and language services, that we are really looking at our eligibility criteria, looking at whether students really can benefit from the services, and also looking at how our services are being implemented, especially in our high school and our post-secondary programs. So with that, looking at eligibility, we have seen a drop in our students that are qualifying for speech and language services. And we also have seen, did I skip here? What did I do here? In occupational therapy. So we have seen a little bit of a decrease in our students that are needing to be serviced with occupational therapy. We do have a slight decrease in our students that have LVN or RN services. So these are our students who don't necessarily qualify for special education services. Some of them, it could be students with medical needs, such as students that have diabetes, or some of our students that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, some of our students that we have been able to transition back from county programs. Some of them have some medical needs, and so we, again, are trying to consider the least restrictive environment, so if we're able to serve them in a district, even with their medical needs, some of our, we're able to do that with hiring licensed vocational nursing services. This is something that we just started this year to track our services that our students that are receiving mental health services. So in an increase of our students that are qualifying for services under emotional disturbance, we do have students that meet eligibility under different criteria, but based on their needs, once you qualify for special education, we look under any services that will help you be able to access your education. And so currently we do have students that aren't in an a therapeutic class, but do have mental health services as part of their IEP. So currently we have 83 students that under their IEP receive mental health services. And it has been a bit of a challenge, and we have 2 district mental health therapists that are providing services to our students. And next year, with the increased need, we are opening an additional therapeutic class at Solorzano Middle School. So our students are in residential placements, so this is the most restrictive environment that our students need to be serviced in. And we have been able to transition 2 students from residential placements either through graduation or bringing back to the district. So 2 students that we were able to bring back in the fall have been able to be serviced in a district program, so we're very pleased about that. And then our non-public schools. So when I presented to you, and then last June, we had 26 students that were in a non-public school. So non-public school is a program that's outside the district program that's more restrictive than a district program. And if a student can't be served in a county Office of Ed program, we look for non-public schools. So many times these are our students who have severe developmental delays, emotional disturbances, or autism. So we have been able to transition students back and be able to serve them in our district programs, and that's very exciting. So that we've been able to have programs that are able to meet these students' needs and our teachers. So we've seen a reduction from 26 students last year to 12 students. So we're very pleased because it's definitely a transition. I mean, I'm proud of our staff for helping to assist with that, and then our students in themselves, they're doing their job to be able to come back. So we're excited about that. One of the things that we are tracking is our initial evaluations. So these are students who are for the first time being assessed to determine if they're eligible for special education services. So you can just kind of see the breakdown. Preschool and elementary, we have quite a few referrals for assessment. And then we also indicated a slide of how many of those assessments, or I'm sorry, how many of those referrals that the assessments are resulting that the students do not qualify. So by the information here, you can see that many of the students that are being referred for special education are actually meeting eligibility criteria for services. So another thing that we looked at is where the source of the referrals for special education is coming from. So the majority of our referrals are parent referrals. So this is if a student, if a parent is asking, or they will write a letter, or they will, in writing, to have their student assessed. So what we are looking at in our department and working with the schools is, and I'll show that on the next slide, is out of the number of referrals for special education, and we're assessing, if you see out of the number of referrals, the number of, we broke it down by the number of initials that resulted in what you call a do not qualify. So although the parent referrals have the highest number of where our source for assessments are coming from, it also has the highest number of students that are not qualifying for services. So we are really working with our schools through the student study team to work with parents in interventions so that, special education isn't necessarily what they feel is the only intervention that they can go to. We also, too, in our department, when a parent is requesting evaluation, we're encouraging, like the school psychologist, and even our staff are talking to parents and working with them to even see if they would be willing to go through a student study team to kind of look at where, and if there's any interventions that we could possibly implement with our students to see if that will avoid them having to be referred for assessment. Because in talking with parents, many times, like I said, they think that this is the only option, and we waste valuable time, because when a student is referred for special education assessment, the timeline is 60 days. So oftentimes, that, if a parent is really concerned about their student's progress, and after the 60 days, and they don't qualify, that's 60 days of maybe some possible intervention that we have missed. Okay, so with our staffing, we've been pretty staffed. Towards the end of the year, we did have some vacancies in our RSP classes, one at elementary and a couple at middle school. And we had one SDC class, and then we had one speech and language. But we are actively recruiting and working on to fill our vacancies for next year. Whoop, what did I do? So another, our behavior support staff that we've had a little bit of an increase. One of the things that we've also been and we've been working on is looking how we are using our behavior support assistants, our special circumstance paraeducators that often were referred to one-to-ones, so they're extra classroom support, and our special education classroom paras. So we have seen a slight reduction in our special circumstance instructional aids, so we're happy about that. Because in addition to that, our students are becoming more independent. One of the things that we've been also trying to do with our students that have a paraprofessional that's signed for instructional behavior purposes is making sure that staff and parents understand that that is a service, not a person. So we're looking at how we're implementing that service and working to have different paraprofessionals be able to work with a student to also help foster independence. Because sometimes when they have just one particular person working with them, they become very independent. I'm sorry, very dependent. So one of our goals from the very beginning is really working to support communication with the sites. So we've really tried to build a team just amongst ourselves. We were all very new. And then working with our principals, our teachers at the school site. So we've been trying to be very visible. We have monthly Java-like meetings where we've had some compliance issues this year, so we really work within our monthly meetings to work with the different professional groups to provide training in those areas, provide any kind of curriculum training. And I've tried to attend the principal meetings, with ed services, so I think that's been very helpful. And then we get very busy in our department, but what we really made a priority is that we have weekly meetings. So the program specialist, the coordinator, myself, just to staff on cases and just make sure that we're kind of always trying to be ahead of what is before us. Oh, and another thing that we did that was really important, and I have to commend Adrienne Summers because it was her idea and she helped implement it, is we've had grade level collaboration meetings. So we've had release days where we have met with the department heads at the secondary level and then with our elementary school. And then we've also had them meet together because many times, we're very focused on the grade level that we're teaching and see how it all fits together. So that has really helped us, and part of our goal was to really look at what is being taught in our instructional programs and how it's preparing for the next grade level. Okay, some of the things that we've worked on with our guidelines and procedures has been the result of some of the CDE complaints that we've had. One of the things that we've really worked on is our private school coordination. So when a student lives within the Gilroy residence and the parent decides to unilaterally or privately place them in a private school, the district is still responsible for what we call child fine. So if they need an assessment, a parent can write a letter or request referral and we will assess. If a student qualifies for services, it's our responsibility to develop and offer an IEP, but they only receive an IEP services under an IEP if they come back to the district. So prior to my team and myself getting here, that really wasn't being done with fidelity because what would happen is, let me backtrack. If the parent decides to not come back to the district, they don't get all the services under an IEP. They get what we call an individual service plan. So usually it's consultation a couple times a year with that private school, and that's one thing that we haven't been doing. For the most part, the district was offering lots of services under an IEP, so they were offering full speech once a week services or whatever the student qualified. So that complicated things and kind of opened the district up for liability. So with Tammy Irvine's help, we researched and we developed a process, and we've been working with SELPA to kind of firm that up, and even actually Jenna can add to that. SELPA is deciding how they're going to collectively work on that because we all want to be on the same page. Because if a student, if the private school they're placed in is not within the district, like for instance in Morgan Hill, even though we're responsible for the IEP, it's the service plan would be provided by the district where the school is located. So there's just been a lot of coordination with that. And then other trainings that we've been working on are what we call a notice of action. So if a student, if a parent is making a request or there's a district wants to move forward any kind of action, we have to notify the parent. So it's communication. So we outline whether we're denying a request or there's something that we want to do, we need to make sure that we're notifying the parent. And then, of course, those timelines for completing assessments, answering a parent's request, requests for records, we have really been working on, so. And then this, again, is kind of just what I spoke about a little bit. These are some of the trainings that we provided this year. So we have we provided the trainings during, our professional development days, after school, during our job alike. What was very exciting is the secondary administrators they had requested that we do some training. So both program specialists provided training, kind of what to look for in IEPs at the last January training. So that was well received, and we would like to continue offering that. And then our school psychologists, we really been looking at mental health and behavior is an extreme need in our district and all across California. When we go to SELPA meetings, that's all we all brainstorm about is how we're going to service our students with severe behavior mental health needs. So one of the things we've been really looking at is training our staff, so trying to build internal capacity. So for our mental health assessments, the district has contracted out for these assessments to be completed, and same with what we call a functional behavior analysis, where it's a comprehensive assessment report looking at the root of a student's behavior. And we had been contracting out with outside agencies, so we're training our staff, our mental health therapists, our school psychologists, and our behavior specialists to be able to conduct these assessments within the district. And again, these are some of the trainings we did with our speech and language therapist, occupational therapists. If they had board maker training, so board maker it gives access to visual, so if students that need prompts or any kind of alternative communication. So we made sure all our OTs, our SH classes, and our occupational therapy therapists had this program, so we did training on that. And then, of course, defensible reports. So when we get an IEE request, many times if we have a defensible report, then we would present what I talked about, a notice of action, and we wouldn't have to move forward with an IEE. What gets us in trouble if we don't have comprehensive assessments and defensible reports. So we're really working with our staff on that. And then in closing, some of our accomplishments, again, attending all the meetings, holding regular meetings with our staff, collaborating with other departments, working with the PBIS staff on behavior needs, attending principal meetings. I have to thank Ed Services. We've worked immensely together. So that's been we've really been able to address some of the needs in the general ed, because again, it can relate to special ed. And we've been able to implement the unique learning system across all our autism and moderate to severe classes. So that was one of the things that we looked at, that there was not a consistent core aligned program that was being used with our most severe students. Also, one of the things that we're pleased is our autism teachers in our autism specific programs were trained in the TEACH training program. To be implemented in all our classes. We also, last year, the Sunday reading program was purchased, and it's been implemented in our SDC classes. And then under the health services umbrella, the district partnered with the Healthy Kids Foundation, and so we were able to pilot dental health screenings at Elliott and Mount Madonna. It was very successful. So students were able to be screened, and then the Healthy Kids Foundation was able to link parents and the students with dentists that could be able to provide services. So we'd like to expand that to a couple more of our schools, and also expand the services that they offer, because they can also help with vision and hearing screenings. And our goals for the coming year are, again, continuing to provide the targeted professional development, communication within our department, with the school sites, teachers, and in the different grade levels. And then again, like I said, providing the trainings and really working with the staff we have to really build internal capacity. And again, in collaboration with Ed Services, what we're excited about next year is we really were looking at not only the curriculum that was being provided in our special education program, but how we were providing services. So next year in our middle schools, in the language arts a 3-period block, that one of the third period, reading period, is going to be used for enrichment, for students, and then as students that are receive special education services, that is going to be more of an intervention period where students are going to be able to get their services, and we're looking at piloting a reading program. And then the same thing with the 2-period math block. That second period is going to be designated to more direct instruction, individual instruction to our students. Oh, and then, last but not least, in our high school programs, we looked at what was loosely referred to guided studies or study skills. It was called different titles at the different high schools. We purchased or looked at a set curriculum, and we're renaming it as a skill development class, and it will be called the same thing at both high schools. And they will actually be set lesson plans, and that's also where the students that receive special education, more individualized service, will be receiving that in those classes. So it's very important. We're very excited about that because our students that are A through G diploma track really need that support. So we're excited about that. One of the things that we're looking at for next year is our SELPA does provide professional development trainings free of cost, but it's very challenging to get our staff there because of subs, and it's very hard to have our teachers out from the classroom. So we are working, and the SELPA is going to come to principal meetings. We're going to do more of a principal type boot camp, and to some of our job-alike meetings to be able to provide training, whether it be curriculum, behavior, mental health, all kinds. There's a whole list. And then again, working with our neighboring districts, especially Morgan Hill, to provide trainings together. So we're looking at some of our mental health and behavior trainings, partnering together to work together, and then also that will help with the cost. And then, of course, ongoing development of implementation of processes and procedures to ensure compliance. So this year, I have to say, we've really been working on compliance, and I really think that we've seen a difference, so we'll continue to work on that. And then next year, really working on our curriculum and our services with our students. And that's it.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Trustee Good.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Director Polito and her team and her colleagues for coming here tonight. I think this is probably one of the best, definitely one of the better presentations I've ever heard in this school district on special education. So thank you.
Thank you. I have to thank these people too. I cannot take complete credit at all for this PowerPoint because Tammy Irvine would have helped me with this, so.
It's very clear, it's very understandable. You're showing us what progress that's been made, particularly with the reduction in residential and NPS placements, which has been eating us alive.
I know.
And so, thank you. I really appreciate your work. I appreciate the presentation. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And I just want to thank Anna and her team. It was a whole new team. Mm-hmm. And considering all the issues that you were faced with when you came in, you've all done a great job. Very pleased to have you. Hope you all stay for a while. Right, yeah. It'd be nice not to hire these people in these positions for a while, because I think the stability alone, since you've already identified what needs to be done, would really be helpful.
Any other questions or comments? Trustee Midgard?
Thank you, Anna. I appreciate the report as well. I have a question about initial evaluations completed. Mm-hmm. You made a nice little graph for us right here.
Yes.
So not a lot of kids qualify who are recommended. Mm-hmm. So what's your opinion about that?
My opinion about that?
I mean, the big picture,
right,
what's
right.
happening? Because I know those initials, they must take a lot of time.
They do take a lot of time. And they take a lot of time, they take a lot of staff power. And then again, and if you see a lot of initials, they don't qualify, and a lot of those initials are coming from parents. So a lot of times parents are without resources, so they're coming to us. So what I think early intervention or intervention programs that are very important. So we've been partnering with Ed Services about that. But we do have things available, but staff aren't necessarily always aware of it. So one of the things that we've been working with our staff, and we do have quite a few conversations with parents when they do call us, because sometimes parents will call, or we will look at a letter or referral a parent made, and they might be in kindergarten, they might be in first grade. Or you look and they are doing well. Sometimes parents, I mean, we've had several where parents don't understand why they don't have straight A's. Or we get a lot of referrals at grading periods. So just having a conversation with them about what this means, and then looking at trying to refer them to the student studies team process. Now, what we had kind of had a compliance issue with before I came here is when a parent makes a referral, we can't refer, let's see, the response to that cannot be, oh, well, we're gonna have a student study team. We can counsel them and explain, but they would have to withdraw that initial request and say, we would like to present with that. So that's what we're working on with our staff to make sure that they understand. Because I think part of the message was, oh, we can't have them go to student study team, because we had kind of gotten to a little bit of hot water with that. So just explaining that we can do that. And then I know at the elementary level, we're really trying to work with that. That's where primarily the amount of our referrals are. I know Tammy has been working with the different teams at some of the elementary schools, looking at their student study team process, and when they're looking at interventions or next steps, what they have available at that site. So.
Okay, for instance, there were 40 referrals from teachers, but only 3 qualified.
No, did not qualify.
Did not.
Oh, did not.
Did not.
I'm sorry.
So if you look, when
Never
we're getting
mind.
teacher referrals and even the student study team, they're pretty accurate. I mean, it's like about, if I can remember that
Well, I
slide,
would
about.
think a teacher, because a parent, of course,
Right,
that's their
right,
one and only, their beautiful child, and they want them to be doing well. But a teacher is that
right.
day in, day out, seeing the
Right.
child, seeing a
Right.
pattern, et cetera. So I would
Right.
think the teachers would be, their referral would be
Right. For the most
more
part,
valid in a way.
what we are working, and I have to say, I'm sounding like an old timer, but, I've been doing this for over 20 years.
Well, that's why I'm
and we-
asking you these questions, yeah.
Yeah, and we're seeing students with different needs than we saw before. So I think they're still working with general education teachers, because we are seeing students that are not seen before. The severe behavior and working with, because sometimes that ends up interrupting with their education, but just in working with them to give them the tools, because again, we're seeing students that we didn't see before. So just, I think that it's like we heard this morning in our presentation, it's just ongoing learning. We have different students, so we're really working with teachers. So I think they have a more accurate perspective, but there's some, I think, situations that they're encountering that they hadn't encountered before, and it's like, we can handle this. So just really looking at what we need to do to help prepare them. Because some of our students you see, by the way, that don't qualify, some of our students are struggling, but it's not necessarily because of a disability.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Bass?
Sorry, thanks. I appreciated the presentation with the unique, I live and breathe unique and board maker, so
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
a big fan. I definitely don't question the desire to use it. I'm just very interested in how you reconcile that with the regular ed curriculum, and then are they taking the alternative assessment? Are they taking the CASP? Which are they taking?
So for the most part, the students that we're implementing the unique program, so they're in our moderate to severe autism specific. The majority of those students are in the testing window, would be would be taking Cal-Alt, and would be more or less on the certificate of completion program. So last year, we had 41 students that took Cal-Alt. So for the most part, and so why we're pleased with it, unique is, again, it is aligned with the core curriculum. So,
And do you feel that that will enable more students to participate in the Cal-All?
I think they'll be better prepared. I think they'll also be better prepared for life, more community-based instruction. Because and that's one of the things, I know that the district had purchased it for, I know, speech therapists, but when I would walk in classrooms, there wasn't a common curriculum that was necessarily being taught and being taught with fidelity. So we have a long way to go. We had our first training in January, but I got several emails and people are very pleased. They're very excited to have something. As you know, it's wonderful, right?
Yes, it's wonderful.
It's wonderful.
Any other questions or comments? I have several, just pieces of information.
Okay.
On the students requiring mental health services, on that slide,
Yes.
I'm like astounded that we have 83 and 2 people.
So, you know what, I actually forgot to mention, we did see that need, and honestly, there's probably an increasing need. And we had to open an additional classroom this year for more of a therapeutic class. So this year, we have been able to hire a third mental health therapist. And one of the and I believe it went to the board today, is the Paradigm contract, how we bill for our Medi-Cal services. So the revenue that we have been able to secure through Medi-Cal billing is going to finance our mental health, our third mental health therapist position. So we're excited about that because there is definitely a need. Yes, they have been, and you know, the students that and because I know you get board updates when it happens, we have several students that they're in crisis. So we have students that, 911 has to be called, so we really do need the support. And we're also needing not only for student support, but with the additional help, being able to provide even some family counseling.
I'm sorry to interject, but were we not billing Medi-Cal before?
We were.
Oh,
But that's one thing I forgot to mention is we actually were billing Medi-Cal. Some of the things that we implemented in going to an online system, so far this year, we're already our revenue is $70,000 higher than last year.
Excellent.
So,
I was also, you've listed that the 83 students are at 16 different school sites? So who am I missing? Who's the 16th school?
oh, did I, is it not?
No,
Oh,
it's
15.
okay. I mean,
Mount
we have
Madonna?
15, so
Mount
do we have?
Madonna. Graduate,
Oh,
I'm sorry,
sometimes
I'm
those
sorry,
Those
we
are
considered them
two
separate.
considered-
Mhm.
Okay.
Because they're
That's all right.
separate sites.
That's it.
Okay. And I really appreciate the graph on initial evaluations, but the numbers look incredible with parents, but that's really only 25% that did not qualify as opposed to 23% with student study team. So they're pretty equal, and I would suspect that that's not even, what is the word that I'm looking for? Significant, thank you. And the other question I have is under district employed classified staff, are those FTEs, those aren't bodies, are those FTEs or are those bodies? Because I thought we had more than 65 paras in special ed.
So we broke them down by their by their classification. So it's 65, let me find the slide, is classroom, paras, let me find it. Where am I?
Because it said special circumstance instructional
Right, so
assistant.
we have a total of
that's still in the para unit?
That is. So we
Okay,
have a
so
total
all
of
of them are in the para
132.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. That's it. See, it was just
Okay.
pieces of information.
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity, and again, I want to reach out and thank my team for a very successful year. We've just gotten started. Great things to come.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job. Okay, we have item 10D, new contract agreement between Gilroy Unified School District and Benchmark Education for Benchmark Advanced Professional Development. Action item. Any This was on,
Well, this was on
on
the
2
last
weeks ago.
agenda, and I think there was just a lot of confusion about what this was about. So Benchmark was adopted this year. Thanks again to everybody
Thank you.
for coming in, the Morgan Hill folks. Benchmark is our ELA adoption for elementary TK5 for this current year. We are implementing it. And as we've done in the past with adoptions, we have the company come in and do trainings for us. And that's what this is for. I think there was a little bit of confusion about it last time. And I don't know if Deb or Kanani want to add anything.
Right, President Pisano, board members, superintendent, yes, we are here. I have our coordinator of Ed Services, Ms. Pratt, here. Ms. Bierman is off at her child's graduation. So she is here to address any questions. As a reminder for the benchmark implementation, it was a 2-year rollout. So not all of our schools were trained last year in benchmark, so we are continuing that training this year. And this is the publisher training for those schools. And Ms. Pratt is directly involved with some of that training, so I'm sure she would be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions, board members?
I remember some of the SEAL folks were going to go through it.
Right.
Correct.
We allowed the SEAL schools we didn't tell them they had to do the adoption. We're talking the current school year. But many of them, of course, did start using the materials.
Correct.
But this next year, everyone is required to do the adoption. So we need to
Correct.
have some training.
Anything else?
Well, thanks
Okay.
for coming.
I will,
Move for approval?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain?
And 1 abstention.
Thanks for
Thank
staying
you.
so late, Kanani.
Thank you, Kanani. You win.
You actually did a presentation earlier that feel shorted. But that's okay.
Okay, item number 11, board members' reports. Do we have anything?
Graduation was fun.
Graduations were fun. Anything else? Okay. And board members, do you have any upcoming and new referral agenda items? Hearing none. Okay. Announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, August 9th. Gosh, that sounds so far along. At 7810 Royal Circle. Closed session will be held at 5:30, followed by a regular meeting at 7 o'clock. The agenda will be available on the district's website by 5 p.m. Friday, August 2nd.
Before you adjourn the meeting, I think I'm right about this. I think that we won't be seeing Jerry in August, right? This is his last board meeting after how many years?
Oh, my gosh.
19 years.
I can't believe you're not going to be here, Jerry.
He's retiring from Gilroy, at least. I don't know if you're working in other districts.
Congratulations for that.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate it, Jerry. I know you drive a long distance to come cover our board meetings, and we've really appreciated it. We appreciate you letting us tease you every once in a while about public comments, but you've done a great job, and we really appreciate it.
I am a little disappointed, though. It's your last meeting, and you actually didn't give us any public comment before. So I'm a little bit sad about that. But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you do all this for us and just having you around.
Yeah. Yes. We're going to be doing, I guess we've already tested it, Maribel? Yes. We're going to do our own.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Thank you,
should
Jerry.
come inside in front of the camera and say hi.
Thank you very much. Okay, then we are adjourned.